Just a minute, the show is coming. It's not quite ready. Oh, it's full of death and destruction. Spooky, scary. Might even be an appearance from Spooky Dude in tonight's show. You never know. We got a great show coming up for you. Thank you. Thank you. We have a great show coming up for you in just a couple of seconds. If you're watching Glenn TV right now on YouTube, thank you for your support. You are part of an online community that values the truth without any of the filters. However, if you're watching us on YouTube, that's a filter. We can't always speak the truth here without big consequences from big tech platforms like this one. They will probably, in the end, label this misinformation, climate change denial. None of those things are true. All we're going to do is we're going to expose the policies that are happening right now in this country and in Europe that are driving us off a cliff. But it'll be an electric car that we drive over that cliff, or actually probably have to push it over the cliff. It's a massive energy crisis that will affect all of us, is already here in Europe. And you've seen it with your electric bills. If you're in the United States, electric bills, gas pumps, it's nothing compared to what is happening overseas. I won't apologize for telling you the truth. That's why we created BlazeTV. And without the support of people like you, we couldn't deliver the content big tech and the Biden administration doesn't want you to hear. I feel like I'm on a PBS pledge. We'll get you a tote bag, too. Actually, we won't get you a tote bag. We'll just get you the truth. And we're not taking money from the taxpayers. Blaze TV, we are not just building one of the largest vanguards against censorship. We're turning ideas into action. Beginning tonight, we're going to show you some things, and we'll follow it up with action, giving you solutions to peacefully fight back against a growing authoritarian state. We have a few more seconds. Join our movement at Blaze TV. Special offer that is good through the end of this week. Go to blazetv.com/Glenn. Use the promo code Glenn20. Save $20 off your subscription to Blaze TV. Thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting us. If this video doesn't stay up, I guess you'll know where to find it. All right, the special starting. Pretend we didn't talk.
Germany will become totally dependent on Russian energy if it does not immediately change course.
Look at their reaction to Trump's warning, the rolling of the eyes, the audacity that Trump would make such a ridiculous claim. Except he was right.
After experiencing record-breaking heat, parts of Europe are going dark. It's just the latest fallout from the continent's ongoing energy crisis driven by the war in Ukraine.
Europe, thanks to its sudden transition away from fossil fuels and its irresponsible reliance on Russian resources, is in crisis mode. And America? We're not that far behind. In fact, California has already begun.
There's big news tonight for the more than 25 million drivers in California. State regulators approved Governor Gavin Newsom's plan to ban the sale of gas-powered vehicles by 2035.
Now the Biden administration is drooling at the chance to implement similar nationwide policies that could destroy the thriving nation we so much love. Tonight, I'm going to show you exactly how Europe's energy crisis began. I'll show you how America's far left is taking the exact same steps that have been proven to fail. And I'll show you the disastrous consequences that we will face if we don't end this climate authoritarianism very soon. Tonight, lights out. How Democrats are creating an American energy crisis.
Those are always so scary. I hate to start a program like that, but it's scary, spooky stuff tonight. Hello, America. Let's start with the Cold War. The Soviet leader, Nikita Khrushchev. Love him, love his shoes. He liked to refer to Berlin as, quote, the testicles of the West. Every time I want to make the West scream, I squeeze on Berlin. Guess what? There's a new squeezer in town. Yeah, his name is Vladimir Putin. He likes to squeeze an awful lot. And he has a lot more than just Berlin screaming all across Europe right now. The entire European Union is saying, let it go, okay? Depends on Russia. All of them depend on Russia for 46% of coal imports, 27% of its oil, 40% of its natural gas. Gee, who warned them not to do? Most of that natural gas arrives through the Nord Stream 1 pipeline that Joe Biden said, yeah, open it up from Russia to Germany. Russia's now turned it back off. Currently, there is no gas flowing to Germany. Zero. Zip. Nada. Across Europe, energy prices are necessarily skyrocketing, and the Europeans are understandably freaking out. Last week, Russia said, you know what? It's easy. We'll turn it back on. Just drop the sanctions, from Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Wait a minute. Is Russia holding Europe hostage just because we're holding Russia hostage with money? That's not right. European gas prices jumped another 30% after Russia's announcement, and the euro slid to its lowest level in 20 years. Even in the Cold War days, American leaders, including Ronald Reagan, warned Europe, don't become reliant on Soviet Union for oil and natural gas. Germany had this cute little convenient arrangement with the Soviets in which they kept, politics and energy separate. Energy wasn't going to be weaponized because, it was convenient because Germany was getting cheap oil and gas, and the Soviets got the cash that they needed. So it was a win-win. But that convenient arrangement in history and Putin, that's gone, and he's now weaponizing energy. Putin has to be relishing this moment because he's been playing a very long game of 3D chess while the EU, Great Britain, and the Democrats here have been playing pancake. Well, look, I'm playing pancake with green energy fairies. Yeah, there's all kinds of fairies around. Don't you see them? Europe, and especially Germany, got caught with its pants down. And when it's involving Angela Merkel, you don't want to see the pants down. The pants came off with their obsession with transitioning as fast as possible to green energy. Sound familiar? Under former Chancellor Angela Merkel, don't think about her pants being down. Oh, see, you did it. I'm sorry. You're never going to unsee that again. Germany spent $412 billion on their green energy transition. How'd it work out? Well, I don't want to say. Reliance on solar and wind power requires a lot of backup energy supply. Who knew? So Germany got even more addicted to Russian oil and gas. That also didn't help, when in 2011, when the Fukushima nuclear disaster happened, the one that killed millions all over the world. But we should check on that? Okay. Germany decided to dismantle all of its nuclear power plants. They only have 3 plants left, which now generate 6% of Germany's electricity. But despite the crisis, we're only going to keep 2 of those plants. We're shutting this one down, and these 2 little piggies we're going to keep online. We'll keep those piggies online, just on standby through next spring, and then we promise, super promise, to close them down as well, just so we can all not eat. Or maybe eat in the darkness. Ironically, Germany has also been forced to reopen retired coal plants this summer just to keep the lights on. Think about the insanity here. You spend billions of dollars, convert to green energy, give everybody solar panels, and it's not working. You still have to supplement with fossil fuels from a hostile state now because you're not making them. And of course, those fossil fuels contribute to the pollution that you're trying to get rid of by going green in the first place. This sounds familiar. This sounds an awful lot like Utah and California. We're not going to make any of that dirty energy. And then Utah makes it all for them and puts it in a pipeline and sends it to them, which is really weird because imagine how Californians would just love Utah if Utah just decided to say, yeah, no more energy for you. You think there might be a war of the states? Yeah, I think so. That's what's happening in Europe. Oh, Also, you have to shut down your nuclear sources of very reliable and energy that has zero emissions. So you got to close those down too. All the while, you pay people to put solar panels on, and then those people pay more for electricity than most other nations. Oh no, that makes sense. It does. Meanwhile, France and the UK haven't done much better. In the last 5 years, both countries banned fracking. Vladimir Putin, he was laughing it up because Russia funded the propaganda campaign that helped the governments decide, you know what? Fracking is evil. Since Russia invaded Ukraine, the French government has spent over $26 billion to reduce gas and electric bills for the French citizens. Well, now the French companies are required to cut their energy use by 10%. Or face rationing of electricity and gas. Businesses have also had to appoint an ambassador of energy sobriety. I hate the French. They have to submit their plans to the government for cutting their electricity usage. Overall, inflation in Europe is now over 9%, with energy having more than 4 times the inflation of the next highest category. But in the UK, Goldman Sachs has warned that energy prices could push inflation to 22% next year, which would surpass a post-war record. Post-war, that was World War II. Well, that wasn't good at the end. UK inflation is already over 10% for the first time since the early 1980s. Wholesale natural gas prices have risen 145% since the beginning of July. The Guardian reports inflation could mean the biggest drop in UK living standards since 1950. Which one is driving us back to the past and wants to live in the 1950s? Combined gas and electric bills for consumers in the UK are now set to increase 80% next month. And that's with the government energy regulator capping what energy suppliers are allowed to charge customers. That means the actual annual energy bill for UK citizens will be over £3,500, which is my weight, but also around $4,200. That's 3 times what customers paid last year. A new report estimates that after paying all of these prices, 1/3 of British citizens will fall below the poverty line. Gee, we'll need more welfare. It's even worse for UK small business owners because they don't count. They're not protected by the price cap. A small business owner, he can afford it. One cafe owner in Ireland posted photos of her electricity bill, which totaled around $10,000 for just 2 months of power. That's a 250% increase in less than a year. The owner says the business is now just recovering from COVID lockdown, so this feels, quote, like a kick in the teeth. The insane prices are not just affecting the UK. Last month, Spain had its most expensive month for electricity ever. Across Europe, governments are trying to cut back on energy use. Munich cut hot water to its city officials. Wouldn't that be great? Spain mandated that air conditioning in the public and commercial buildings be set to no lower than 81 degrees and heating no higher than 66. What? Oh, by the way, those limits are in place until the end of 2023. Switzerland is now considering a law to fine and jail citizens who heat their homes above 66 degrees this winter. Isn't that great? Now that Europe is in full energy mode crisis, the EU has slapped together a Green New Deal of its own. It's called Repower EU. Wouldn't that be great? Now, I would think, I'm not a world leader, but I am a thinker. Rather than course correcting, the headline rush into green power, no, they've done something different. They doubled down on getting rid of fossil fuels. And it only cost another 210 billion euros. Wow. That's great. And, you could reduce your energy by 40%. We can do that. In fact, can we please, just because we care about the planet, could we please just reduce our power right now by 40%? Oh, great. This is perfect. Now we can be like a Netflix movie that nobody can ever see anything. Yeah. Earlier this month, Italians in Naples burned their energy bills in front of the town hall. Yeah, people don't like this. 10 days ago, an estimated 70,000 protesters demonstrated in Prague against their insane energy bills. And this could become a growing political problem. You think? They're demanding an end to the sanctions against Russia. So what does this all mean? Europe is a giant warning sign for the U.S. right now, and that pain that they're being inflicted on, you know, when you spurn energy independence, yeah, and you rush into expensive green energy production that doesn't provide all the power you need, it's coming here. Now, that's not just some conservative talking point. No, that's from a 2014 scholarly a scholarly Swiss financial advisory firm. They examined the consequences of Germany's green transition plan that was already well underway. They found, surprisingly, Germany's massive effort did not provide net savings to the consumers. Instead, it brought a net increase in cost to consumers and other stakeholders. Now, I want you to hear how they concluded, because this should be plastered on the walls of every U.S. Congress and every state house and in America, and over the mouths of every greenhead. Over the last decade, well-intentioned policymakers in Germany and other European countries have created renewable energy policies that have slowly revealed themselves to be unsustainable, resulting in profound, they say, unintended consequences for all industry stakeholders. Accordingly, the United States and other countries should carefully assess the lessons learned in Germany with respect to generous subsidy programs and relatively rapid large-scale deployment and integration of renewable energy into the power system. So we should listen to what happened in Germany and learn from that. We're not going to. Are we heeding the warning from Europe now? Do we even hear about the warnings from Europe now? Oh, we'll examine what we're doing next. Gee, I don't know how this book got on my desk. I'm sorry. There's lots of important things in your life every day that's really a good idea to worry about. You know, you don't really need to add a new one to your list. I'm here to tell you of a new one. It's called home title theft. It's a growing crime. Yeah, they're inventing all kinds of new crime right now. It's the glory days for criminals. If you take steps to protect yourself, you don't have to worry about it. Here's how you find out. My partners at Home Title Lock have a free special offer for you. Just go to HometitleLock.com. Gosh, this book is just driving me crazy sitting over there. Put it right here. You just enter your address for free, no obligation home title scan. This is how you'll discover if somebody's already camping on your home's title. Your title to your home is the only document that proves that you own it. And once somebody forges your title, they can take out loans on your home and forge the name on a... Maybe it would be less distracting here. First things first, make sure your home's title is securely in your name. Go to HometitleLock.com and use my promo code RADIO and enter your address for free, no obligation home title scan. $100 value free. Again, it's HometitleLock.com. Promo code RADIO.
We're heading to the worst part of this heat wave, and the risk for outages is real and it's immediate. These triple-digit temperatures throughout much of our state are leading, not surprisingly, to record demand on the energy grid. Everyone has to do their part to help step up for just a few more days. Individuals, the state, industries, business, all doing their part to help reduce strain on the grid.
Just before the break, I asked if the U.S. was heeding the warning from Europe about what happens when you sacrifice your energy independence on the altar of the green gods. The answer is no, of course not. Heed the warning? No. The fifth largest economy in the world, California, is trying to one-up Germany on their idiotic energy policy. No U.S. state spends more on going green than California. Sounds like Germany. Unfortunately, you can't shrug it off as just as California's crazy, normal, crazy crap that they do. Because more and more California's single-party authoritarians are essentially creating environmental policy for the rest of America. California Democrats are obsessed with driving their state towards 100% clean energy by 2045. And just like Germany, that means it can't handle normal everyday power needs right now. In fact, during peak demand hours, California gets only about 1/5 of its power from wind, solar, and hydroelectric power. We got to get rid of those dams, though, because they're hurting the fish. Californians pay a lot more for their electricity, even though its reliability is threatened every time there's a heat wave, a cold snap, or a stiff wind. Nationwide, average electric bills are up 11% from, summer to summer. In California, up 25%. We're number one. Over the past couple of weeks, Californians have been urged to conserve as much energy as possible to prevent blackouts. That includes people being told to avoid charging their electric vehicles, which is kind of hilarious because that warning came just a couple of days after the state banned the sale of new gas-powered vehicles by 2035. Something doesn't add up. I'm trying to do the math. You're being told you can only buy EVs from now on, and yet your state doesn't have enough power for you to actually charge it. Without a charge, you can't drive anywhere. Wow. Over 40% of the EVs currently used in all of America are registered in California. Experts have warned that California's power grid does not currently even have the capacity to add millions of additional EVs. But don't worry about that. Power grids are easy. They're a dime a dozen. One study estimates that upgrading the charging infrastructure to accommodate all of these EVs will cost the state $5,100 per vehicle. Well, let's just add that tax. That's a terrific plan. By the way, since the Biden administration is pushing this EV revolution that regular Americans are not asking for, get ready to feel the electricity squeeze right where you live. The recent study from the Hoover Institution finds that Americans will have to double the size of our electrical grid to accommodate the switch to EVs. Like I said, so what's the big deal? So you double the size of the grid. How hard could that be? Another way California is following Germany down the disastrous green path is shutting down its nuclear power plants. Diablo, the Devil Canyon, is California's last remaining nuclear plant. It is the state's largest producer of electricity. It's between 9 and 10% of California's total electricity. And it's clean energy, 0 emissions. But we got to shut it down. They planned on shutting it down in 3 years. But now California is so desperate for power that the government is extending the life of Diablo Canyon for 5 more years. How is it still controversial to talk about keeping one nuclear power plant open when your state imports more electricity than any other state? And they still get 1/5 and 1/3 of its electricity from neighboring states, and they're doing it with coal. Why would you shut that down? California's grid is under such strain that it had to activate 4 natural gas-powered emergency generators last week just to keep the lights on. Also last week, California's grid operator announced it is requiring a power plant in Oakland that burns jet fuel to continue operating through the end of next year, just to help avoid more power outages. Boy, that sounds green as crap, doesn't it? This is insanity. But despite its dire electrical problems, California legislature just passed a ton of even more aggressive measures to battle climate change. They approved spending a record of $54 billion over 5 years, including great new ideas like buying new electric school buses. Hey kids, hope you like walking. Under normal circumstances, common sense, Americans would just watch California burn itself to the ground and you'd go, glad I didn't live there. But that's no longer the circumstance because this isn't no longer normal. 17 states, 17 have actually tied themselves by law to whatever emission standards Californians come up with. Apparently, the leadership of these states think California has some unique green energy genius, or they've all been bought and sold. They obviously haven't been paying attention to Germany's cautionary tale. Now, here's the part I like. Did the voters in those 17 states decide whether they wanted to hitch their wagon to California standards? No. No, the elected officials did it. You know, the people that represent the people in those 17 states. California now has far too much national influence on green policy. With their recent ban on the sale of gas-powered vehicles, for example, Washington State almost immediately announced, "We're doing the same thing. We love it. We're going to follow them off the cliff." Other states are expected to follow soon, maybe 17 of them. By the way, this ban isn't just some distant problem 13 years down the road. There are phases to it. So by 2026, 35% of all new vehicle sales must be EVs. By 2030, 68% of new vehicle sales must be EVs. And by 2035, 100% of them have to be EVs. That'll be great. Power grids for everybody. There's also penalties for failures to comply. We will set the standards. Automakers will be fined $20,000 for each vehicle sold that violates those targets. The free market. It had a good run. Currently, the average price for a new gas-powered vehicle is about $48,000. The average price now for a new EV is over $66,000. Now, you might think that a Democrat-run government like California's, would want to encourage its low-income citizens to be able to save and buy some transportation of their own, even if it is an evil gas guzzler, because that's the lifeblood of getting around in a state like California. But no, California cares so little about the economic progress of its lower class that alongside the state's massive green spending, it's going to pay poor residents $1,000 to not own a car. Maybe we could all just stay at home. Wake up, America. The left does not believe in you. Okay? You're a cog. That's it. You're a smurf or a serf or whatever they were called. In fact, it wants to keep you dependent on its crappy services. Now, despite all this gloomy news about California's future and the future of the states gullible enough to follow California's lead, there may be a silver lining. I haven't found one yet. No, I'm kidding. I have found one. Mexico is staking its energy future on fossil fuels in front of a cheering crowd at the recent grand opening of a brand new oil refinery. Mexico's president said, quote, "We ignored the siren song. You know, the voices that predicted in good faith, perhaps, the end of the oil age and massive arrival of electric cars and renewable energies. Power grids for everybody." Mexico plans to spend over $6 billion over the next 2 years to build 15 fossil fuel power plants. So the silver lining for California is you now have a southern neighbor who will sell you some energy because you're going to need a lot of it. And if things don't work out for you, you have an open border. I wonder if they'll have sanctuary cities for you. After a quick break, let's explore some more green agenda warning signs that America should be paying attention to. Let me talk to you about Relief Factor. Relief Factor, it's not a drug. If it was a drug, I don't think I could sell it, and I don't think I'd want to sell it. This was developed by doctors, which I don't trust a lot of the doctors now, so that doesn't help out either. Let me shoot to the bottom line. Relief Factor. I was in pain. I started taking this, really, almost against my will. My wife was like, "I'm not going to listen to you whine anymore. If you don't try everything, it takes some relief." All right. And so I took it for 3 weeks. So I don't care if, I don't know, ferrets in boodle pants were the ones who discovered it. It works. At least it does for me. 70% of the people who try it go on to order more month after month. Drug-free, natural way to get your life back. It's ReliefFactor.com. That's ReliefFactor.com.
When thousands of XL customers in Colorado tried adjusting their thermostats Tuesday, they learned they couldn't. Denver 7 consumer investigator Jacqueline Allen talked with some of those customers. Jacqueline, they're upset they had no control over the temp in their own home.
That's right. And, Excel is calling this a rare energy emergency. And yes, they took over tens of thousands of smart thermostats here in Colorado. For the first time, there was nothing homeowners could do about it.
Mama, come on over. You got to see what's on the boob tube. They couldn't adjust their own electricity. Who told you not to get one of those things? I'm thinking, I don't know who it could have been. Whenever there's a problem, they will declare an emergency. Get to shelter. We'll control the vertical, the horizontal, and the temperature. So there's a heat wave in Colorado, and Xcel Energy locks thousands of customers out of their own thermostats. Who would have seen it coming? They weren't able to set them lower than 78 degrees. Instead, they got a message in their thermostat saying temperature was locked due to a... Energy company says it only affected those customers who had voluntarily signed up for a program that gives them a $100 credit for unrolling and another $25 annually in exchange for, giving up some rights. Hey, $25 and I don't control my own life? I get that every year, $25? Okay, maybe it's voluntary for now, but how long will a state like California let that be, something that you can control, you can sign up for? They're going to mandate a smart thermostat in every home. Better stop it now so they can tell you how hot or cold you're going to allow to be, depending on the emergency situation. And don't worry, they never happen. Don't get any big ideas about landscaping around your house either, because the left is coming for your lawn as well. Washington Post recently featured a diatribe against having a lawn, calling it, quote, a sign of power, privilege, and zombie boomerism, among other things. And of course, one of their main reasons for being anti-lawn is climate change. In Los Angeles, the Department of Water and Power has a force nicknamed the Water Police who patrol the streets, to enforce the city's water restrictions. They look for water on sidewalks, running down the street into the gutter. Who could be offending us with that? And we can fine them up $600. If you're a repeat offender, the Water Police will add a small metal device to your pipes called the restrictor. It chokes your water off, so it won't function. Yeah, you won't be able to do anything that's crazy, like take a shower with decent water pressure, or heaven forbid, turn on your sprinklers. These are little indicators of control, warning signs that are growing in the U.S., and it's a result of environmental zealots gaining power. I can remember when the funny lone tree hugger used to represent a very fringe movement. Yeah, not so fringe anymore. Yeah, I mean, it's still probably the same number of people, but they have all the levers of power now all around the world. And the great thing is we're seeing we're seeing results. For example, 3 years ago, the United Nations started a campaign to pressure governments to cut down on things like nitrogen waste to save the planet. Now, a lot of that waste comes from the use of synthetic fertilizers. Well, the nation of Sri Lanka decided to go all in on this UN pressure, and they banned all synthetic fertilizers. Sri Lanka imploded. Farms were unable to produce, as much food, and food prices rose only about 80%. They had economic chaos and massive riots in the streets, which...
With Sri Lanka on the edge of economic collapse, government supporters attacked peaceful protesters, beating people, destroying tents. 9 people died and more than 200 injured as violence spread across the country.
I saw a chyron on the bottom of the screen today watching. It says, crowds gather surrounding Buckingham Palace. And I thought, ah! And then I realized, it's because someday it won't be like that. In July, people swarmed the presidential palace. The Sri Lankan president resigned, fled the country. I'm sure he took a bunch of money. In Holland, Dutch farmers are protesting their government's latest demand that they have to reduce their nitrogen emissions by 50% by 2030. By the way, that nitrogen fertilizer, it only accounts for about 30% of the world's crops. So don't worry, a lot of people freeze to death or die just because of their air conditioning and, all that stuff. So we're going to have plenty of food. The Dutch government estimates the new restrictions could shut down over 11,000 farms. Sounds like total insanity. When your nation is the second largest exporter of agricultural products. I wonder, can we eat tulips? The Dutch government is setting aside $26 billion to buy out those farmers who won't bow to the new green god and its religion. Better wake up. The very last thing any country in the world needs is a government in control of food production and supply. Because if you control food, you can control everything. The Dutch city of Haarlem, the government is already turning the screws on food control. They've passed a law that will ban any advertisement for meats in public places, starting in 2 years. Oh, you're gonna love this new crop of bugs they got. Using the cover of climate change is gonna become the best strategy for total control the progressives have ever come up with. When you can use existential crisis as your justification, no part of life is outside of government regulation, and governments are literally gearing up to save the planet. How about you? Canada's Ministry of Environmental and Climate Change is building a facility in Winnipeg that will house an armory, interrogation rooms, biolabs, and media relations offices. What? The same ministry also has job postings for climate pollution officers to be a part of a division called the Environmental Enforcement Directorate. Ooh, that doesn't sound spooky or creepy at all. Now you might say, Glenn, these are all examples of growing climate authoritarianism in other countries. We're not then. Oh, really? Our own Environmental Protection Agency does maintain a unit of special agents, fully armed with body armor, camouflage equipment, unmanned aircraft, night vision gear, and other military-style equipment. Boy, it must be those Amish farmers. And this year, under pressure from a group called Public Employees for Environmental Responsibility, the EPA has been hiring more criminal investigators. Again, we can look to America's environmental leader, California, to understand why more EPA investigating and policing are in the future. In July, California's Environmental Protection Agency office sent a notice to landowners in California who have a private well on their property. Beginning next February, the state will require owners to pay an annual $300 fee for each well on their private land. You have to submit a monthly usage report and pay a fee for the water that you pump. I wonder if 17 states are going to go along with that. True land ownership is eroding in America. Reminds me of the mantra from the World Economic Forum that you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. California is setting the pace for environmental authoritarianism nationwide, and the current White House is helping them do it. In March, the Biden administration granted California a waiver for the Federal Clean Air Act. This allows California to set even higher environmental standards than the EPA. And it also allows other states to hitch their wagon to the California standards. 17 have already done that so far. This is how authoritarianism thrives in our systems. Your states have been taken over by madmen. You don't need to do the hard work of getting Congress to stand and to change EPA standards. Not when the very planet is at stake. You just use the executive branch to grant a waiver, which lets California run the insane green policy that you want. Then a third of the states join in. And the next thing you know, old Jed's no longer a millionaire. I think it's safe to say most Americans are in the dark about the scope of environmental authoritarianism that is already underway. Deloitte, the global accounting giant, recently released a dramatic report called Turning Point, a global summary. It says, quote, a coordinated transition to a net zero carbon emissions world would require governments, along with the financial services and technology sectors, to catalyze, facilitate, and accelerate progress foster information flows across systems, and align individual incentives with collective goals. Oh, that's all we are doing is aligning your will with ours. Sometimes these reports read like quotes from, I don't know, James Bond villains. But this isn't fiction. These totalitarian statements are being issued, applauded, and funded by the financial and government elites of the West. This is the transition agenda that's already in motion. This is Team Biden, and we're going to show you how they further that agenda in the U.S. next. I wish there was a way we could help the ranchers who are really in trouble right now. You know, if there was a way we could get food from those ranchers and those farmers in the heart of our country. Oh my gosh, I just thought of something. There is. It's, well, what a coincidence, right here on the screen. It's Good Ranchers. Wow. You get your meat prices locked in for as long as you're subscribed to them. The prices will never go up. That doesn't sound like it's going to end well for the farmer, but tummy says yummy. Here's the thing. The best part about this is the meat you are getting is from America, made by Americans, and American cows have sacrificed their lives so you could have a meal. Use the promo code Glenn and get your box of meat $30 off plus free shipping. Only thing that you'll have more than the prime steaks, better than organic chicken, and superior seafood, Good Ranchers, is the price you're going to pay for it. So head on down, become a subscriber now. Lock in your price forever. GoodRanchers.com/Glenn. GoodRanchers.com/Glenn. America's meat delivered. Now, some of the viewers who are watching right now listen to my radio program today when I was saying, and half of the program is going to be about solutions. I made that promise. And here's the thing. My staff walked in after my radio program and said, what are you, and I said, I thought we had those solutions. We talked about all the, like almost an hour of solutions we had. And they said, yeah, that's for the radio program tomorrow. And so let me just say this. I'm always right about the direction, just not so good with the timing. So join us for the solutions tomorrow on radio. Okay, I want to play Democratic Representative Elaine Lura of Virginia. She is letting slip here one of the worst kept secrets in history about the Inflation Reduction Act. Watch.
As you mentioned, the Inflation Reduction Act, that might be the name, but it's a huge environmental bill that includes a lot of things, such as the tax credits necessary to make these kind of developments viable.
Who saw that coming? It's a shock to me. Well over half of the Inflation Reduction Act is green energy spending. Told you so. $392 billion worth. That's a conspiracy. Not anymore. Remember earlier when I told you about Germany outspending everybody in the mad dash to convert to renewable energy? How that's working horribly for them? And how California is proudly following in Germany's goose-steps? Yeah, well, now your federal government is also doubling down on the same failed strategy by setting aside $62.7 billion in new tax credits for renewable power sources and another $51.1 billion to extend existing tax credits just for wind and solar panels. Isn't that great? America's version of this failed strategy may end up being even worse than Europe's because of how our government is shoving us into the electric vehicle future. We're simultaneously going to stake our electricity future on sources that we know can't keep all the lights on. At the same time, this flickering grid is supposed to replace gas as our fuel for all of our cars. Oh, by the way, what are we going to do with all those batteries in about 8 years? Anybody thought of that? The Biden White House wants EVs to make up 50% of car sales in 8 years. Currently, EVs are only 6% of the total new car sales in the U.S. How are you going to increase sales by 44% in 8 years? You have to force the change by law, like California just did. This is how Captain Transportation Pete Buttigieg reacted to California's new law.
Well, it's interesting to see how the states are trying to go above and beyond what we're doing at the federal level. And I'm really interested to follow these developments while we continue to set a national policy that's the baseline for all of this. We need to move in the direction of electric vehicles.
I'm sure he's very interested in following this development. And he's like shocked. Who knew 17 states all legally bound themselves? I didn't see that one coming. Because California is the test case to find out how soon they can go ahead with a federal gas car ban. Once you have 17 states on it, they're going to say, this was an amazing thing. Everybody's going there. We don't need to move in the direction of electric vehicles, okay? The environmental zealots think EVs are the magic pill that will save the planet, but that's not real. If there was a huge market demand for EVs, government would not be forcing a changeover by law and subsidizing automakers into making EVs. Now, I'm no doctor of economics, but I am a doctor, and I'm pretty certain that government bribing an industry to do what they want is not exactly how the free market works. Yet that's exactly what the Democrats just passed, $17.1 billion in tax credit, loans, and grants for making and buying of EVs. I bet you Tesla doesn't get it because they're not a good union shop. And just like magic, within days of the Inflation Reduction Act passing, there's a flurry of announcements from major car and tech companies about plans to build new EV battery plants in the U.S. Public-private partnerships to save the planet. That's the massive effort they tell us it's going to take to reverse climate change. Sounds great. Also sounds like socialism, but sounds great. Here's what I think, where I think this is heading. Energy is going to become nationalized. It's already tilting this way in Europe. You put a price cap on it. The energy companies can't afford to make the energy, so the politicians blame the energy company. We're going to take it over because that way, right? This is going to happen. Because if you have 17 states saying we're not going to sell gasoline cars, then you've made a self-fulfilling prophecy that the world shouldn't invest in oil. But you forced it the whole time. This is going to be unaffordable to almost everybody. Some governments like the UK, they're capping it. They're capping their energy prices. More governments are going to follow. The energy companies will not be able to operate under these capped prices. Service will become spotty. Everybody will blame each other. The evil capitalists, blah, blah, blah. And bang. We have a socialized system. Because you can't have no energy. So governments will swoop in on their white horses and save the day. And there you have it. Nationalized energy. And everybody is happy and you own nothing. Europe is giving us a preview of it right now. California has already taken the bait. But will the rest of the U.S. blindly follow? Or will the states, the 17 states, stand up and say, wait a minute, when did this happen? Back in a minute. All right, there's a couple of things that I wanted to address before we go. First of all, we're going to be talking about solutions tomorrow on the radio, I promise you. Is somebody who actually has a real bullet point plan on what needs to be done and what we need to have our politicians do. But more importantly, I'm going to give you the 17 states that have already signed on for this. Is there a chance that anybody in those states want to start kicking up dust and demanding that their state turns the corner and gets away from California? We'll be talking about all of that on tomorrow. Also, we're going to do a couple of specials, extended specials. One is going to be on what do I do if the FBI shows up at my house? I don't know. What do I do if the ATF shows up at my house? I don't know. I got rights, you know. Yeah, you do. You better be very, very careful. We're going to do a show on probably 4 different scenarios from each of those agencies and what you should do and how you should handle it. That's coming up in a couple of weeks. Also, a special with economic experts on the road to serfdom. That's next week we begin there. And I believe it's the following week we have a group of experts that can explain what life is going to be like, because we are headed for real trouble. Our states and our local communities and our neighborhoods are the only ways to solve our problems today. One other note. I know I've been pushing this lately an awful lot, and I appreciate it if you are already a subscriber to BlazeTV. But if you are watching this on another platform, I would like to invite you to become part of our family. We are determined to be the Alamo, and we are being demonetized and being silently hit from all sides right now. And we would really appreciate your help, and most importantly, for me at least, that we stay in contact with each other, and we have to have no middleman between us. Will you join us at blazetv.com/Glenn? Become a subscriber, use Glenn20 and save. Good night.